For any of you I have not met before, I'm Andrew. I'm one of the educators here at Bywater. I have Kelly here with me to help field some questions.
Hi, everybody.
Today we are doing a What's New webinar for 1811. So we're covering just a smattering of highlights of upcoming features in 1811, new features and important bug fixes, and just sort of this and that. As we go along, you notice you all don't have audio access, so you are welcome to send messages through the Zoom chat or through the Q&A feature. Kelly's going to help me field those as we go along. If you are in the chat, be aware that it is possible in Zoom chat to inadvertently set yourself to only send messages to the presenters and not to everybody. And then that just confuses people. So if at all possible, try to message everybody so everybody can see your question. But yeah, do feel free to chime in with questions as we go along. Won't hurt my feelings at all. And we'll also make some time for questions at the end. So let me share my screen and get all my windows where they need to be. 2 monitors, and yet I'm always out of space. All right, so first off, over on our blog, you will find the 1811 upgrade webinar schedule. I imagine Kelly will put that link in the chat. This page has general upgrade details and the schedule for all of our upcoming webinars. You've probably found this already because you managed to sign yourself up for this webinar. But remember that we've got a bunch of other specific webinars coming up. All of our webinars will be recorded and will all be on our blog. This time for the first go-round, this is the first time we've done this, we do have agendas for each of our webinars linked under each of those headings. Those agendas have links off to the bugs for all of the different enhancements we talk about. So if you want to dig in there and find some more details about how something works. We will also, along with the recordings, have listings of all of our the questions that people ask and the answers we give to them, things that we end up sort of fleshing out based on what comes up in these webinars. The upgrades to 1811 are going to start in June and go throughout the month. As usual, your upgrade will take place after 8 p.m. your local time, and you will get a notice in the news section of your staff client about a week before your upgrade happens. It'll be a big red box that says you're going to get upgraded, and it'll tell you the date that that will happen. After your upgrade happens, all you need to do is clear the cache, the browser cache on all of your workstations to make sure that Koha works properly post-upgrade. Scrolling back up to the top of this page, there is a link here to the 1811 upgrade notes. If you want to dig through everything, we're not going to cover everything today, or even really everything through the course of all of our webinars, just because there are always some things that don't bear that much discussion, either because they're very small or they just don't really apply to our libraries. But yeah, if you want to dig in and really make a day of it, probably several days of it, go ahead and have a look at those. But without further ado then, I'm going to launch into our content for today, and I'm going to start on the OPAC. Let me shunt myself back home here. So the first thing I want to say about the OPAC in 1811 is that there have been changes to the default Koha CSS, the cascading style sheets. That means a lot of things like colors here and there, fonts, just sort of display changes. If I jump over to our demo site, this is pretty much what Koha is going to look like by default now. If you compare that to what you have on 1805, it's not hugely different, but among our early adopters, we have had some sites that when they switched to this, some of their customizations went a little weird or just didn't look quite as good. I feel like this has been a particular sticking point. It's hard to tell amid the gray background, but the little Koha icon is a different shade of green now. And we have definitely seen some sites where the new shade of green doesn't look as good with the color it's sitting on top of on customized OPACs. So when you get upgraded, if you do see things that don't look quite right, do feel free to let us know, open up a ticket for that. Lucas, who does most of our OPAC customizations, has been hard at work sort of preparing for the sorts of things we expect to see go funny. I'm glad Matt likes the new green. Yeah, it's a perfectly fine green in and of itself. It just, I think the one I saw, there was a dark maroon. The head looked fine with the old green and looks a little weird with the new green.
And Andrew, Matt's from Mercyhurst, and his color is green and blue, so it went well with his OPAC. Yeah. Good. I like the green though as well.
If you have poked at all at your own OPAC customization, you are welcome to address anything that goes funny from there yourself. That'd be all in the OPAC user CSS system preference, or if you're using the Galadriel OPAC plugin, which is a plugin I think most of our partners have, it's one we made that just sort of makes a little more easy, a little more, it's a graphical user interface to change how your OPAC looks. So by all means, feel free to play with it yourself or ask us to have a look at it. Karen seems to be suggesting that if we just hide the entire OPAC, the problem is solved, which I do like.
I'm not sure if that's the greatest thing to do, but if that's
there is that OPAC public system preference. You can just make your whole OPAC hidden. Go for it. We'll answer a lot of Patreon questions too, or at least avoid them. No, it's fine, Karen. You could do it. It's your library. You can hide the whole OPAC if you want. I like it. The public service librarian in me likes the idea of shutting everybody out of the catalog. Okay, so getting a little more serious. I'm going to do a search on here. Oh, what should I search for? Might be The Hobbit because it's right there. And my computer's going to go bing, bing at me. So first off, and I'm still on the demo site. Let me jump back over.
I was going to say something, and I thought maybe.
Yeah, you know, it'll work either way, but just in case anyone else is playing with our demo site right now. The next thing I'm going to show you here, I'm really excited about, even though it is very small. Over here in our facets, we have a new facet for collection code. I don't know if any of you have run into this before. It was something I was keenly aware of. Previously, if you wanted to do a search limited by collection code, that was only doable by first going to advanced search and using those little drop or checkboxes to select your collection code up front. Collection codes now show in your facets after you've done a search, just like item types, location codes, holding libraries, all that stuff. So just a little bit more flexibility for folks who really rely on their collection codes to know what's what. You no longer need to do that up front. So just like any other facet, if we click one of these, it just goes ahead and limits our search to just fiction. There we go. Keyword Hobbit, limit, C code fiction. All right, for my next thing, my next trick, I'm going to do a search that is going to require me to spell a word that I'm always bad at spelling. I think I did it right. So isn't that exciting? I did a search for Labyrinth DVD and nothing came up. However, if I log in, I'm going to log in as the support user. And it's going to think about it a second. What's that? I logged in and now Labyrinth DVD is showing? We have some new functionality with the OPAC hidden items system preference that allows us to set patron categories who are exempt from the OPAC hidden item limits. So you can say, all this stuff is hidden in my public catalog unless you're logged in as a staff user, in which case they are not hidden. So if I jump over quickly to the staff client, do a little search there, OPAC hidden. So we now have, along with OPAC hidden items exceptions. So Almi asked, why are some things hidden? In this case, we have, in our demo catalog, we have anything that is an ILL item or anything that is withdrawn hidden in our catalog. And that's not unusual. Incoming ILL things you don't necessarily want everybody to find. Stuff that's withdrawn, often stuff that's damaged or lost, or I'm just trying to think other reasons. Whatever sort of reason, you might want to have something in your catalog that patrons don't get to just see on the public catalog. Yeah, so whatever reason you have to hide things, if there are then things you do want certain patron categories to be able to see. Yeah, payment records. If you're using acquisitions to track purchase or the cost of like your licensing for various vendors, those need to have a bib to be in acquisitions, which would make them viewable in the catalog, which you don't really want somebody to find like your Baker and Taylor usage fee in your public catalog. So if you're not using OPAC hidden items already, I wouldn't get into it just so that you can enjoy the fun of OPAC hidden items exceptions, but it's there if you want it. That'll be a general theme throughout the webinars. Any of these things that look exciting to you, probably open up a ticket to have us poke at for you, or dive into it yourself if you want. Okay, back to the catalog. And I didn't even look at why Labyrinth was blocked. I think it's probably an ILL. Yep. Now, next up, I'm going to place a hold on here. Oh, Janelle asks, what's the difference between hiding in the OPAC and suppressing the item? Suppression in Koha takes place at the bib level. You would suppress the bib, which then hides the bib and all attached items from the catalog entirely. OPAC hidden items hides just the item. It shows the bib let me say this differently. It shows the bib unless all of the items attached to that bib have been hidden. So there's not a big technical difference between them, except one is for bibs and the other is for items. And so, yeah, absolutely. I would not be surprised if we have previously discussed suppressing items, because it's not very functionally different. All right, next up, I'm going to place a hold on Labyrinth. And this is going to be another exciting demonstration of something that's not there. So once my hold is placed, once I have clicked place a hold, and I come here, my pickup branch, very excitingly, my pickup location dropdown does not contain one of my branches. If I go back over to the staff client again, you can see I do have an east branch in my setup here. We have newly in Koha the ability to declare any branch as not available as a pickup location, to say patrons cannot have their holds sent here. So for multi-branch locations that for whatever reason one of those branches does not allow hold pickup, this will stop your patrons from in error setting things to be picked up there, whether that's an offsite storage location or just a teeny tiny branch that doesn't have room for holds, whatever reason you've got to not want holds sent to a place. I believe previously we were hiding this sort of ad hoc with jQuery, and now there's actually a system preference, or not a system preference, but a branch setup value to handle it for real in Koha. And then next up, another search here. I think I've got just one more OPAC thing. Please re-explain that last point. So we can now, and actually let me bring it up here. In your administration and libraries, for every branch now, there is a value of pickup location, yes or no. Can patrons set their holds to be picked up here? Any branch that you say pickup location no will not appear in that branch selection dropdown when a patron is trying to place a hold. And that assumes, of course, that you're allowing patrons to pick their hold pickup location at all. There's a system preference for that. If that is set to no, then patrons just pick their holds up at their home library. But if you're allowing patrons to pick where they get their holds, you can block any given branch from showing up in that dropdown here. When was the pickup option location? George asks, when was the pickup location option added to libraries administration? You mean this column here? Or do you mean the ability to let patrons pick at all? This column here, this is new. This is 1811. Right. Yeah, this column here, pickup location, is new in 1811. Jerry asks, so I want to allow patrons to pick up at only their library. What settings should I use? I'm going to forget what that's called exactly. Let's find it. It's in here someplace, unless I have made up a system preference, which wouldn't be the first time. Here we go. No. I'm blanking on it. Let me dig into that, Jerry, because it's there someplace and I have forgotten what it is.
I'll keep looking for you, Andrew.
Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
I just learned a couple of weeks ago that the developers have an acronym for yet another system preference. Every time some development says, oh, this is going to make another system preference, I say, yep, there's yet another one. Okay, back to the OPAC. I did my new search for love, and in my results, I've got my regular Koha search results. I've got an error searching my Overdrive collection because I don't have it set up properly, because Bywater doesn't actually have an Overdrive subscription. And then finally, this is new. Found 4 results in the library's recorded books collection. So we have, okay, digression again. Kelly says the system preference we're looking for is OPAC, allow user to choose branch. There we go. Oh, see, I searched for pickup, not pick space up. So if OPAC, allow user to choose branch, is set to allow, when a patron places a hold on the OPAC, they'll get a drop-down that lists branches to choose where to send their hold to. If any of your branches have that column in libraries set to no for pickup location, they won't be in that dropdown. We probably could have made the name longer if we'd really tried.
Oh, that's not even close to the longest name, Jerry.
If you weren't at KohaCon in Portland, Oregon this past year, we played some Family Feud Koha trivia thing.
This can be found on YouTube. I can share that link.
We should have asked, what's the longest system preference name you can think of? Okay, back here, recorded books integration. So we've had Overdrive integration for a little while. We are working on adding a whole bunch of new e-content integration, and recorded books is new in 1811. We do have a blog post for this. And if Kelly could put the link to that in the chat. So if you have ebooks through recorded books, they can set that up here. Hold pickup is always a lot of questions. Anna Galanis asks, are customers able to change their pickup location after the hold is placed and processed by staff? They're able to change it after the hold is placed, but not after the hold is captured. Once the book is on the hold shelf, it is there. They would have to call you and work something out with you to get it moved to another library. But as long as they're just, as long as that hold is pending, the item has not yet been checked in and triggered for the hold, then they still can change it. Carol asks about Cloud Library. Cloud Library is coming. Yeah, Recorded Books was formerly known as One Click Digital. They went through some name changes. Yeah, this is separate from Cloud Library. So with this new integration, there's a little bit of setup in the system preferences, a few values they want there. It's a, I forget exactly what they call them, but basically an account name and password for recorded books. Those are things that your recorded books rep or just recorded books customer support can give you. I believe that blog post goes through some details of how to get those values. Once those are put in, anybody who does a search on your catalog will get this little link that shows them recorded books content. So when I do a search, if there are things in my recorded books collection that meet my search, I get this link. And then when I click it, it shows me my recorded books ebook content right here in my Koha OPAC. Now, additionally, because I am right now logged into the OPAC with a Koha account that contains an email address that matches up to recorded books, I'm able to right here see checkout and place a hold buttons, so I can do all of that right in the Koha OPAC. Wendy asks, will this work for a consortium, some of whom have recorded books and some don't? I believe so. We've been doing some consortium setup for those. It gets a little more complicated, but yeah, we can still make that work. Trying to spool up as much as I can remember about the details of that, and it's not much, but let us know. We'll get the folks who know the ins and outs of that end of things better than me to work on your ticket. I promise I won't do it. Now, if I were not logged into the OPAC, I would still be able to see these search results. I just wouldn't get these checkout and place a hold buttons. Additionally, if I go over to my account in the OPAC, yeah, Sarah asks if Overdrive integration works the same way as recorded books. Broadly, yes. There are like a couple small differences, but yeah. And there's also a blog post on our blog about how to set up Overdrive integration. But it does the same general thing where you do a search and it gives you a little link there that says there are Overdrive results. Okay, so over in my OPAC account, I do have a tab here for recorded books. And again, because I'm logged in as a user that has an email address that Recorded Books recognizes, I get to see my recorded books checkout and holds right here. I don't have anything checked out, but they would show there. Does e-content results appear in the staff client? No, they don't. This content here, I keep pointing at my screen in a way that you cannot see. This content that we're seeing in the OPAC does not show up over on the staff client. If you don't want to search for it in the OPAC, you could do that on Recorded Books' recorded books is site. Broke my possessives. Or, of course, that we do have tons of libraries that instead of or in addition to this setup also bring in MARC records for their e-content and have that just in their catalog. And then, of course, those do show up. And you can put a link in the 856 to take people over to recorded books to actually check the thing out. All right, now I'm going to jump over to the staff client. And I'm going to go to Tools. Our next exciting new feature is, Almi asks, says, I don't understand what the integration is if it's not MARC records. It's actually, the integration we were looking at here is not, how am I going to phrase this? It's going off and searching recorded books and then showing the search results from recorded books in this website, but not actually pulling those records into Koha. It's sort of embedding that search in your Koha OPAC. And Anna's got a question about holds. Going back to customer holds, currently if a customer cancels a hold while on the hold shelf, the canceled hold does not appear on a report. Is that possible? Yes. Do you mean, so the book is already on the shelf? Yeah, that is possible. I want to say it's also possible to just stop them from being able to cancel that hold once it's on the hold shelf. Or maybe I'm conflating a bug that I have seen that says you should be able to stop them.
There was a bug that said, please don't allow patrons to cancel hold once they're waiting.
Right.
So.
And Almi says, but they can be checked out or put on hold. The recorded books content can be checked out or put on hold from your OPAC. Again, it's giving you buttons to do the same thing you would do over on the recorded book site, just sort of embedded here.
And before Andrew moves on to the next subject, I have put all the blog posts for all 3 ways that Koha integrates with 3 different vendors with ebook integration in the chat, and we can put it on the upgrade note page, those separate ones, and they are all tutorial videos.
Yeah, so we don't have a webinar scheduled to talk just about Overdrive and recorded books integration, but Kelly and Jesse did make good videos about how those buttons work, how that integration works overall. Those buttons do not take you to the recorded books and Overdrive site, I think. Now I'm trying to remember.
They do not.
No, they just perform that action still in your OPAC. But yeah, again, it's really like it's embedding the recorded books or Overdrive site in your OPAC. It's doing those functions within this site rather than pushing you over there. But then ultimately the checkout is through Overdrive or through recorded books. It's still going to be reflected in your stats there rather than in Koha. It's just sort of changing the interface. No, if you've got it set up, you have the checkout and hold buttons here in your Koha OPAC. And those buttons will check the thing out for you here without making you go over to the other site. If you scroll up in the chat, here, this will work. Kelly linked the Cloud Library blog post and the the Overdrive blog post. I run into problems when I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, and I say the word I'm looking at rather than the word I'm trying to think about. Cool. Back to tools. Within our catalog section, we have a new thingy, stock rotation. So stock rotation is an entirely new feature. It's kind of like rotating collections, but a bit more structured and automatic. So in stock rotation, this is a way for us to set a group of items that automatically move between branches based on a schedule we create. So I'm going to walk through this kind of quickly and say generally that if you want to look at this more, submit a ticket for it, because the setup for it is not the easiest thing. And it would eat a good chunk of our time if we really dug into it here. So within stock rotation, first we make what is called a rota. And I'll admit, I was surprised to find that rota is actually a word. It sounded like some weird, just like a developer-y abbreviation of a word, but it's a real word. Who knew? So we make a rota where we say, okay, this is our new books rota. We will put new books in here and they'll move between branches. We give it a description, say, yeah, it's going to rotate new books from the main library to smaller libraries. Within that rota, we set up a couple things. First, we set up our stages. So in here we can say, things are going to go to the main branch for 2 days, after which point they will be moved to the East branch, where they will stay for 45 days. We can add in more stages here. We can say, okay, and then after that, they're going to go to the, suppose we'll go northeast, southwest. They'll go to the South branch for 45 days. And we can scoot these around if we want to, change the order these things happen in. Okay. I'm going to back up without saving that. Notice I did say this rota is cyclical, so it's just going to go through those stages and then start back over again. So we've got our rota defined, we have our stages defined within the rota. Then we go to items. And this is where we attach items to this process. So these 3 books are currently at the main branch, and they are in our rotation. They will stay there for 2 days, and then they'll move, and then they'll move. We could move those manually if we want from here, but generally, all of these things are going to get rotated by a cron job. It's going to run every day and check to see, okay, is there anything that should be moved based on our stock rotation setup? And it will go ahead and change those branches for you. As we've played with this some, it's got some room for improvement still, particularly in reporting and in how it tells you what's getting moved and when. So we have written some reports. If you want to use this, we have some reports we can give you to tell you things like what's going to move in the next month or in the next week, or sort of whatever you might want to know about it. It's not as transparent as it probably should be up front. And I know we've filed some bugs and some enhancement requests to sort of fill this out. But if you've got groups of items that you want to move pretty automatically through your branches, Linda asks, this is only branch to branch, not area to area. That's correct. Yeah, it's only between branches. I can see how that could be useful, though, to sort of move between shelving locations or collection codes within the library. And George says, rather than daily, can the cron job set to be set to run on, let's say, the first day of each month? I suppose it could be. But it seems like it would be easier to just make your stages go month to month. Janelle also likes the idea of basically stock rotation within one building. I would say that would be a super cool thing to put on Bugzilla as an enhancement request. And you could let us know if you would like help with that. Yeah.
Automatic item modification by age is a good tool to move things within the library.
That's true. If you wanted to, and if you haven't looked at that, you might. Automatic item modification by age says, you set up a rule that says something like, any item that is more than 60 days old, change it from new books to regular fiction or regular collection. So that might do what you are wishing this would do, but it's not quite as full-featured. You couldn't, and it applies across your collection. Jason asks, are checked out items forcibly moved, or do they remain at the location they're checked out at? I believe, my memory is that while they're checked out, they are out of this rotation, and then when they come back, they go back into the rotation and start counting their days over again.
Yes, that's correct, Andrew.
Kelly played with this a lot more than I did. And Carolyn asks, in your example, how does the main branch know which titles are to move after 2 days? How are they alerted? That is what I meant when I said this needs some more reporting. The cron can output a list of item numbers, which you could then take and figure out from there. But item numbers aren't that helpful when you're looking at physical books. So that's what we have written reports for. That sentence was harder to get out than I expected. So we have a report that you could run to say, okay, this is the stuff that as of today needs to move from main branch to east branch. And then George asked, this question is probably outside of the scope of this discussion, but I'm curious as to where the rotation data is stored in the database. It is, and I've got it marked here, there are 3 new tables. Stock rotation items remembers the specific items. Stock rotation stages remembers the specific stages, and then stock rotation rotas remembers the whole rota. Basically, if you go to the database and have a look for stock rotation, you'll see all 3 of them, and it's fairly clear how they go together. All right, from here, I've got one that doesn't really give itself an easy demo. So let me show you from admin. Spell it right? Can I spell? That's the big question. New system preference, use email receipts. So this is a new one, entirely new. If this is set to send, whenever a patron who has an email address makes a payment or has a fine written off, Koha will send them an email receipt. An email that says, hey, you paid $2 on your late fee. Ta-da. These are new notices. You will see them in tools, notices, and we've got account payment and account write-off, 2 new notices. If that system preference is on and your patron has an email address, these email receipts will send to them automatically. So if that's a thing your patrons would like, to get email receipts, flip it on and have at it. If you're somebody who likes to fiddle with your notices and poke around at the wording and whatnot in them, when you look at these, you'll notice that they are visual aid. They're written in template toolkit syntax. So they look a little bit different from other notices in Koha. They don't have those little double bracket hungry alligator things. Instead, they've got these square brackets and percent signs. You've probably seen these a little bit here and there. Koha is generally moving toward this syntax for notices, which again is called Template Toolkit, because it's a little more powerful than the old Hungry Alligators syntax. It lets us do a little bit more. But yeah, if you're a big notice fan, it's a different markup language to learn. And we've got some good resources for how that works together. Christopher asks, is this a digestible email or is it sent for each line item?
Each line item.
Okay. Yeah, so it's each payment, right?
Mm-hmm, each payment.
Yeah. So if you make one payment that is 5 fines, it will be one email receipt that will say you paid on these 5 fines. Sarah asks, will it default to off? Yes, it will default to off. And Jen asks, will all notices be updated to use this? I would say probably eventually all notices will be updated to use this. Most notices now can use this. These account payment and account write-off, these are the first 2 notices I've seen that only use this. So it's the general direction things are going in, but it's not going to be an immediate change. And Joe asks, can one branch use and not others? Not to my knowledge. That's something you could look at if that's something you want to do, but as far as I know, no.
Global system preference, on or off.
Yeah. George says the automatic renewal notices are in Template Toolkit. That's correct, yeah. You can send an automatic renewal notice not in Template Toolkit, and if you've never looked at the automatic renewal notice, it's this kind of complicated thing that figures out when it sends whether or not something renewed and why, and then makes the wording based on that. And that's the sort of fancy stuff that Template Toolkit can do that the old notice syntax cannot. It exists somewhere between programming language and like markup language, which is probably deeper in the weeds than we need to go. But yeah, broadly speaking, Template Toolkit is the anticipated future of notices. So if you love notices, may as well start learning it now. But if you've never looked at your notices or you don't care to look at your notices, you can continue to let us do that for you. All right, next up, I'm going to pull up a patron. Oh, George has a question. If Template Toolkit can do an auto-renewal notice based on whether or not an item is renewed, couldn't a Template Toolkit notice for a payment be sent or not sent based on the sending branch code? I'm going to put that at a maybe.
But a possibility.
In the case of the auto-renewal, Template Toolkit, the email is being generated and Template Toolkit is determining the content of the email. So the figuring it does is a little bit further downstream than deciding whether or not an email will get sent. But then I'm not quite sure what Koha does if we tell it to send a blank email. It might just not send it. This is a fun question to be answered at a later time.
This is a good reminder that we do have questions listed on the blog post after each session and our answers. So if we are unable to answer it today, we certainly will find the right person to answer that for us.
Yep, and that'll then go up on the blog. All the questions we did answer today will also go up on the blog in case an hour from now you think, oh, what did they say about that? But also anything we can't answer on the spot, we'll track down whoever does have that answer. All right, next one. I'm going to, Laura Ingalls Wilder. My notes just said go to patron 312. I don't know who it was. Oh, Laura. Laura has fees and charges of $550. let's have a look at Laura's fines. Oh, this is what happens when we don't reset our example patrons. Pardon me 1 second while I create a manual credit for Ms. Laura Ingalls Wilder. So, you know, we've had some changes to how credits work in Koha. These do tend to sort of center around lost items that have been returned, and then that return generates a refund. And then your patron who has already paid off that fine ends up with a credit. And then different libraries have different feelings about what they want to do with those credits. So first off, this is a thing that is technically being released in 1811, but you all already have on your sites because we backported it. But, so you've probably seen this apply credits button. Whenever you have a patron who ends up with a credit on their account, if they have both that credit and some fines, when you come to the Pay Fines tab, you'll see the fines that they owe, and then in green, the amount of credit they have on their account. And then you will also get this Apply Credits button. If we apply this credit, it's going to take that $30 and use it to pay off as much of these fines as possible. It will always start with the oldest fine, pay off as much of the oldest fine as it can, and then move forward through those fines until the whole credit is used up. So like I said, this is something that has been on your sites for a little while here, depending on how much you dig into fines and fees and how much you watch that. You may not have interacted with this yet. But yeah, this exists in Koha now. There are 3 ways this reconciling credits can go. The first way is you just have it here and you use this button as desired. When you see a patron who has a credit, if you want to apply the credit, you click the button. The second way you can do this is there's a cron job we can run for you that says every day, look through all the patrons, and if they have credits, apply those credits. Use them to pay off fines. And that would just, again, happen every day, early in the morning when all your other crons run. And then the third option is there's a new system preference called Auto Reconcile that says, okay, don't make me click the button. Don't make me wait for the cron. Just every time I touch a patron's account, every time I save a new fine or payment or write-off, anytime I change their account, reconcile those credits immediately. So this all gets deep enough into specifics of different libraries, policies and what your practices and what you want to happen. I will say broadly, open tickets for these things. Like let's sit down and talk about exactly how you want it to work. But yeah, you have those 3 options broadly. George asks, will applying a credit create one of the new payment receipts? No. I'm glad Kelly knew that for sure, because I was 98% sure. Yeah, it's not really paying a thing. It's somehow or another this patron has ended up owing you money, which could be they overpaid for something in the past, or it could be they got generated a refund for something. So that's reconciling credits. But we definitely have libraries who they don't want credits at all. They didn't want that patron to get a refund on that item return in the first place. They don't want credits. So we have another new credit option. And this one is actually new in 1811. It's not something you've had previously. If we go over to account, and we see credit for $30 that I just made. Every credit now has a void button. Anytime a patron ends up with a credit on their account, if that credit was in error, you can make that credit go away. It says, are you sure you want to void this credit? Yes, I am sure. Be gone, credit. And that zeroes it out. It is gone. Voided, $0. Ta-da. Yeah, and I definitely know I've talked to a lot of libraries that want, if I lose an item and I owe you $15 for it, if I bring the item back before I pay the fine, they want me refunded that $15. But if I pay the fine and then bring back the item, they don't want that item back. I have bought it; it is mine. They don't want Koha to say, "Hey, library, now you owe you owe Andrew $15." So you can void that credit now. While we're here, you'll notice that also we no longer have a reverse button here in patron accounts. Because we now have void, and void does what we actually want to happen, reverse is gone. No more reversing, only voiding. It's a much cleaner process than reversing was. All right, let me pop out of Laura's account so I can show you an exciting new button. This little button over here, last patron. This is a new thing. I don't remember who asked for this one. But we now have a button whenever we have been in a patron account and then we leave it, we get a new little button that says last patron that remembers, who was I looking at last? Who was last at the circulation desk? And now I've realized I did something wrong and I needed to go back and fix it.
You sound like you have experience with that.
I do have experience with that. Who did I just have on the phone that I told them I would place 10 things on hold, and then after the 8th thing I got distracted and I forgot what the other 2 books were? It takes us back to the last patron we were looking at. This is a system preference to allow or don't allow that button. It's called Show Last Patron. Yeah, it seems pretty handy to me. But yeah, it just makes the button appear and take you back to the last patron. Scott asks, will that work per branch/staff login at branch if you have multiple branches? You mean the last patron? No, that is again a global system preference, whether or not the button shows up. Difficult back arrow. So actually, last patron, if I leave here, I go, I don't know, let's tinker around in this. Basically, last patron is going to stay there until I look at some other patron. Theoretically, I could just back all the way up.
That's why I was laughing, Andrew, because yes, back button does work to a degree.
It does. If it matters, it's going to load that patron's page new rather than just backing you up to the version of the page you were on before. And then Almi asks, is that default on or off? So leave show last patron, yes, should default to off. Broadly speaking, new features are off. I'm sure there are exceptions to that now that I've said that out loud. And actually, let me use that last patron button again. This is a big webinar for demoing things that are, look how something isn't here. Over here in the patron details, notice there are fewer details there than there used to be. This little box here, in previous versions of Koha, always showed patron address, phone number, email address. There is now a system preference. I'll jump back to that, Almi. There's now a system preference to hide those details from this screen. From this little side box. So if your circ computer is out in a kind of public place where you don't necessarily want everybody's contact information quite so obvious on the screen while they're checking out, you can turn on hide personal patron, this is another long one, hide personal patron detail on circulation. It's descriptive at least. So jumping over to my system preferences, hide patron. No, I got it wrong. Hide personal patron. Maybe I didn't eat enough lunch. I just thought about personal pan pizzas. Anyway. Hide personal patron detail on circulation. This is going to be set to don't hide by default because that's not hiding it has been the standard up until 1811. But you can set it to hide if you want to take that stuff away. And then show last patron to show or hide that last patron link. Next up, I'm going to bop over to the Koha homepage and show you down here toward the bottom, checkout notes pending. I don't remember exactly when checkout notes showed up in Koha.
Probably like 1605.
Yeah, a little bit ago. So these are, if you have checkout notes turned on, a patron who has something checked out can, in the OPAC, submit a checkout note to say something like, I don't know, I spilled coffee all over this book. Or probably more specifically, there was coffee all over this book at the time I checked it out. Felicia asks, to see the patron personal info, would you have to go into edit the patron record? No, let me back up real quick. Oh, with my last patron button. Handy. If I go to details, I still see everything here. Laura's not a great example because she has no contact information.
Laura.
Bad choice. I can see that all here. I'm just not going to see it in this little inset box on the side. All right, checkout notes. If you're using checkout notes, a patron can go onto the OPAC and say, there was something wrong with this book. That creates a note that pops up when that item gets checked in. So the cert person doing the check-ins sees this little note that says, I don't know, there's gum in the book. Prior to 1811, that was really the only way to see that note. The patron would get an email that said, you submitted a checkout note successfully, but it wasn't really obvious. Oh, here, can you see last patron if I scoot my window a little bit? If it'll let me scoot my window. Wow. You can see my cartoons. Last patron, it's way up in the corner. Line up. So now in 1811, we have an easier way to actually see those checkout notes. You will see a notice down here on the Koha homepage along with your tags pending approval and your article request, stuff like that. You'll see a little checkout notes pending. That will link you to your checkout notes. Or if you go into circulation, there's a new checkout notes button here in the circulation module as well. Which will show you this patron had this book and put this note on it, ripped first page. And from here I can say, okay, Callie, I have seen your note, check. I think when checkout notes were developed, they really was intended to be used as something that you wanted the library to know at the time they checked your book in. But I know I've had tickets where it turned out that a patron had tried to use that to say, like, I need my book renewed. And that didn't really work very well for that because there was no way for the librarian to see that note easily to know that they should be renewing that book. So this just gives a little bit earlier and a little bit easier visibility on that checkout note. And again, there's a system preference to turn checkout notes on at all. That's called allow checkout notes. If you have not been using them, this really will not be relevant to you. If you want to turn them on and play with them, that's there in your system preferences. Margie, that's correct. Your checkout notes will not disappear. Well, no, strike that. They will disappear still when the thing gets checked in, because they will still pop up. If I take this and grab that barcode, I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to check that book in. I'll make myself a note to make a note. Pardon our loud beepity beep noise.
I love it.
So yeah, here's my note. Here's where it shows on check-in. Patron says, this thing is ripped. Also wants to transfer somewhere. Oh, and Kelly owes a fee. Mini notices. But now if I jump back here and reload this page, I do believe that will go away. Yeah. So because it has been shown to me there, it is resolved. If I wanted to mark it as seen from this screen before the item gets checked in, I could do that. You are welcome. For my next thing, I'm going to jump to course reserves. Let me go into, how about small plant gardening? So those among you who manage course reserves, I hope will be excited about this new button, Batch Add Reserves. So previously we had to add course reserves to courses one thing at a time. Now we have a batch add tool. This just wants us to put in a long list of barcodes, preferably not the same thing 7 times. But yeah, it's going to take all the barcodes we give it here, put them all into this course using the values we set here. Should be a real time saver. It is only going to work, I'm going to say the batch you do needs to be a batch that is all for the same course and is getting all these same values here. So you can't just like put all your reserves in one big go, but still it should be a big time saver. What is a course in this context? This makes mostly an academic library thing, an academic, a college or university class where the library has readings that are on reserve for that class. You know, students come in and check them out for 2 hours and use them just in the library. So for a bunch of you, this is going to be really irrelevant because far and away, I don't know that even 50% of our libraries use course reserves, but for academic libraries, it's a big deal. All right. From here, I'm going to go into acquisitions for a bit. Some acquisitions and then some cataloging. Probably means that I need some tea. So 1811 has, did I skip fines and fees? No, there's not. So I talked about the payment and write-off emails and some credits related things. There are some more fines and fees stuff we'll talk about specifically in the CERC webinars, but that's all the fines and fees stuff we're covering in this one, in this general.
You just went out of your order in the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm used to having an agenda.
I know.
Messing up everybody's scorecards. Okay, acquisitions. There are a bunch of acquisitions things. So again, there will be more in the specific tech services webinar, but some highlights for here. First one, I'm going to just grab a vendor. Ooh, Kelly makes a good note while I'm finding a file. Returning to KohaCon 2018, Ed from the McKinney Public Library did a really nice presentation about how one could use course reserves to manage display books. Jill, we do have some things other than cataloging and acquisitions. Let me scroll through what's left in my list. Acquisitions, cataloging, some label printing, inventory, ports. We have a wide smattering of stuff still left. All right, so here in acquisitions, I'm going to open up a new basket for Amazon. And show you a button that I am really excited about. When I am adding to my new basket, I have a new choice here of from a new file. So previously I had from a staged file, which would take me over to the staged mark files. And it basically threw a bit of a wrench into the acquisitions workflow. I had to remember to go over to tools and stage a file before I came to acquisitions to use that file. Now I have a link that just says from a new file. I can just start from the basket, go here, and this walks me straight into finding and staging a mark file. So it's not a different process aside from the fact that it's really just streamlined to make a little more sense. I'm with Sarah. I also think this is fantastic from a perspective of explaining this workflow to people. It's so much cleaner than it used to be. It works exactly the same. Same screen here. Yeah, it's just cleaner. I scrolled around in my sheet. Now I gotta back up. I'm not going to go through the rest of this because, like I said, it hasn't changed. George is excited even though he doesn't use acquisitions.
That's so nice, George.
This could be what gets you started. I didn't want to use acquisitions, but that new button.
I will tell that to Nick. He will appreciate that.
Actually, factually, I do still want to be in that basket. Backed up too much. For this next thing, I'm going to do this. Let's just make a new empty record. So this thing I'm going to show you works however you are adding something to your basket, but it's going to be, I think, simplest to demonstrate here by just giving a pretend bib. Pretend book. And let's give it a barcode, why not? And add an item. So obviously this part might be a little different for you based on how you acquisitions, but as we come down into the accounting details, give that a fund and we'll give it a price. This is the exciting new thing here. Retail price and replacement cost. Previously, Koha was using one number for both of these things. It was assuming that what you paid for the book was what you wanted to record as the replacement cost for that book. We're now maintaining two separate numbers for that, all the way through acquisitions and on into the item record. So perhaps this is a $20 book and I get a 40% discount. My budgeted cost is 12 bucks. That's what's going to get recorded in acquisitions as how much I paid for this book. My replacement cost remains $20 unless I change it. Save that. This actually is already a separate subfield in the 975 for mark fields to import. Because this was already two separate fields in the item record, the price and replacement price, but it was not two separate fields in acquisitions. This does get a little confusing when combined with mark item fields to order. So if you're using mark item fields to order, talk to us about that would be my answer there, because it's not as clean as it should be, and it's not as clean as it will be ultimately.
There's a bug right now. I believe it's been patched, so we're just waiting. So I'll post that bug in channel.
So if I go over to my pretend book and I look at that item record, it has remembered, except I clicked it wrong somehow. I didn't make it remember. I messed it up, guys. Oh, I'm sorry. It gets saved over to the item record once it's ultimately received. And I'm not going to go through the whole process because that's more time than we want to spend. But yeah, when I get around to receiving this book, it's going to, again, assume I'm paying $12, but that my replacement price will be $20. And at any point along the line, I can change that. But it's letting me maintain separate numbers the whole time. Now, speaking of receiving, we have a new thing we can do with invoices. I'm just going to grab any old closed invoice. How about this one? That's not what I want to click, though. Pardon me. I clicked the vendor. I want to click the invoice. Oh, this already has one. Within our invoices, we now have adjustments. For those times when maybe you have received a book and then the vendor comes back and says, oh, I made a mistake. That book actually should have cost $2 less. I'm crediting you $2. Or you've received a book and then later you find out you messed it up when you received it. You put the price in wrong, or you forgot to include shipping, or any number of things that can go wrong with an invoice and have you later wanting to change that invoice total. We can now do ad hoc adjustments to those invoices. Instead of having to cancel receipt of the book and then re-receive the book with new numbers, you can just adjust the invoice. So I'm going to go add an adjustment. I don't know, we need to pay another $25 on this invoice. There is a drop-down for reason. This is something you set up in your authorized values. So this drop-down can have whatever options you want it to have. Library mistake. We can add a note. What fund does this adjustment to? If we're paying another $25 on this invoice, what are we charging it to? And then if this invoice is not yet closed, do we want to go ahead and encumber that money until the invoice is closed, at which point the money will go to spend? So in a perfect world, we don't really use these adjustments very much, but in the real world that we all live in, stuff goes weird in acquisitions. There are times when you need to make sort of ad hoc changes to make things correct. This is just a tool to make that easier. These adjustments, you can see they're shown down here, total plus adjustments plus shipping costs. They're also shown over in the big table on the acquisitions homepage in here. So yeah, it's just giving you a sort of multi-purpose tool to adjust your invoices to make them accurate. All right, now I'm going to cataloging. My first cataloging change, go into default framework. I'm going to make the quickest and ugliest record you ever did see.
Hide your eyes, real catalogers.
Yeah.
Eyes.
I'm just a public services librarian. I don't know what I'm doing.
I knew it was going to be Heather that said something.
So we have a new system preference that lets us define mark fields to record in our mark record. Pamela, it's nice of you to give me credit for knowing the essential fields, but those are just the fields that I remember are marked as mandatory. Every time I put something in the 003, I think, what's this for again? Lets us record who made this record, their borrower number and their name, and who last edited this record, their borrower number and their name. And these can be obviously separate fields. You don't need to do all four of them, but it can do all four of them. So I know Koha has that cataloging log that saves all changes made to anything, and it's a really big log, and we don't tend to turn it on because it's so big. This is a really nice, lightweight alternative to give you a little more tracking of who's been doing what. And obviously, this is just the last one edit to this record. But yeah, record some nice stuff for you to go back and look and see who made this weird record. I shouldn't say that. Who made this exceptionally good record? Who should get the credit for this fine cataloging? And this is going to be a system preference that I forget exactly what it is called. It is automatic once you set the system preference up. Missed it. Let's look in catalog. Yeah, so Marcia, it's automatic once you set it up. And honestly, if you wanted to put this in the 599, you could, but it's going to record the Koha username, which might not be exactly the formatting you want to put in the 599. Here we go. Mark field for creator ID, for creator name, modifier ID, modifier name. And Felicia asked, does this apply to imported records or only ones created within Koha? Creator ID and name will be only for things created in Koha. Modifier ID and modifier name will apply to everything. I'm not certain whether or not just the act of importing a record is going to stamp it as you having modified it, or if you would need to then open that record and resave it to get it marked as the modifier. So that's worth testing. We'll look at that. But yeah, you just come in here and give it the mark field you want those things to go in. We went with the 945 because we weren't using it for anything else. But yeah, as Marcia said, like the 599, that could make sense. If you've got folks who are forgetting to put that in manually, Koha can put it in for them automatically. Next up, I'm going to do a quick swing by mark modification templates. Marcia asks, what about bulk edits? I believe this does apply to bulk edits, yes. Speaking of bulk edits, modification templates, we've got a new option here. So previously, in modification templates, we had one option that said, add this field or update the existing. So if you said, I've got this new value that I want to put into the 500A field, Koha would look, and if there was a 500A, it would put that value in there, and if there wasn't a 500A, it would make a new one. But there was not a way to say, I always want a new field. So that's what we have now. We have a new option that is add new, I made this a 550 for some reason, add a new 550A with only add, which we'll look and it will say, is there a 550A already? If there is, make a new one. If there is not, make a new one anyway. It's always add as opposed to update or add. So just a little bit more flexibility there to let you make mark modification templates do what you want to do. George likes it. And then Marcia likes it too. Or she likes something. She might be talking about bulkhead stuff. Let me come in here. A couple changes to how records show in Koha. First off, here in the holdings table for item records, there's a new column here. Date accessioned is going to show in this table where it did not used to previously. And then second, if we go into checkout history for this item, this table has just gotten added to the column configuration interface over in administration. I know we looked at this when we upgraded to 1805. We've just got this configure columns tool over in admin that is slowly gobbling up more tables in Koha to give you more and more easy customization. So if we go catalog, checkout history, it's just a way for us to easily say, I don't need you to show me when this thing was due or where it was checked out. Hide these columns, continue to show me the rest. Before this was here, we could have hidden those columns with jQuery, and it's just so much easier this way. All right, next up, the thing that I might be most excited about, and I don't know if anyone's going to share my excitement because it's kind of deeply nerdy. But over in, actually, I'm sorry, I don't want to show it to you from here. This is about label printing, but I'm going to show it to you over in admin and classification sources. So right now in Koha, in 1805 and earlier, whenever you catalog an item, you tell Koha, this is the classification source I'm using, which basically usually means it's DEWI, it's LC, or it's generic. And that determines two separate things. It determines first how that call number gets put in order when Koha tries to figure out what order stuff should be in on the shelf. And then also it figures out a splitting rule. So it knows if you're printing a spine label, how to make that spine label split so that it puts the call number on the right lines, right? Except, let me grab an example here. We run into a lot of libraries that, like, technically they're using Library of Congress, but they have some call numbers that are a little weird, like their whole reference section where you've got your by the books LC number here, but then we put ref before it to denote that it's a reference book. And when we feed that into Koha to say, split this as an LC number, Koha gets a little cranky about it. Because technically speaking, by the book LC number shouldn't say ref at the beginning. Yeah, Pamela says they do this, and yeah, lots of people do. It's very common. So we feed that in there, and we get this label, which kind of stinks because it has moved our period from before the B to before the P, and it's totally messed up our call number. And there's no good way around that as things stand now. Well, as things stand in 1805. But in 1811, we have a new option that is so cool. For our splitting rule, we can split as Dewey, as generic as LC, or we can write a custom regular expression splitting rule to make your call number split any way you want it to split.
What? No way, Andrew.
Thank you for mirroring my excitement back to me.
You're welcome. I'm sure a lot of people are screaming also, but we can't hear them, so I'm going to be for everybody. And yes, this is a free space. This is a free space for anyone to admit their cataloging faults or their differences in spine labels. Koha, we're just trying to make Koha work every way it can.
Here I've written a regular expression splitting rule. If you haven't done much with regular expressions, this is kind of weird and meaningless. It looks like a bunch of S's and N's holding hands or something. But if I feed in my call number and I say test, it does it right. It splits it right. It'll print a spine label that I want it to be. And we had fun playing around with this because what this is actually doing is some substitutions. It's replacing that period with a period and a space. So there's kind of a lot you could do there. Like Donna, one of the other educators, said she had talked to a library where in their catalog, everything is just marked as R and then the call number for reference, but they really want they want the sticker to say reference. And you could do that here. You wouldn't have to change every call number. You can just make the label say what you want it to say. So this is a tool I anticipate using a lot. This was the first thing I thought of, but yeah, absolutely, there will be other things. Marcia says they're waiting on printers to start printing via Koha. So yes, if you have any call or spine label splitting woes where Koha has not been splitting things the way you want them to be split, I'm not going to say blanket we can make it do now because then someone will come up with a really, really crazy call number. But probably, we can probably make it do what it should do. From there, I'm going to inventory. Pretty briefly, because inventory is hard to demonstrate without getting deep into it. Marcia says the children's department is going to make us sweat. And Joe asks, branch specifics for splitting rules? So your choice of splitting rule ties to your classification source. You can make as many classification sources as you want, and then that gets applied at the item level. So if you wanted to make a splitting rule that only got used by one of your branches, you would make a classification source that was just for them. So yes, that can be branch specific. Okay, inventory. Mostly, I'm just going to show you this new exciting checkbox. Check barcode list for items shelved out of order. So if you're doing inventory by scanning a bunch of stuff on the shelf, making a text file of a bunch of barcodes, and then feeding that into Koha, previously Koha would tell you, these books weren't in your file and I expected them to be. These books were in your file and I didn't expect them to be. Now Koha will also look at the order those things are in and tell you, also, this book was here in the list when it should have been here in the list. Basically, it's doing some shelf reading for you and telling you, what do you need to go back and put in order on the shelf? Now, I don't know if anything can ever replace the joy of sending high schoolers to stare at shelves for hours at a time to do the shelf reading manually. But Koha might be better at it. I know when I did shelf reading as a college student, I was not good at it. And I just kind of wandered around the shelves for an hour and then said I had done it. So Koha won't lie to you. It will actually do its shelf reading.
What, Andrew? That is horrible.
I wanted to make Heather feel better about admitting to her cataloging.
I see a question from Ron. I'm not sure. Did you address base 64 images?
I think Ron's trying to sneak pictures into his spine label.
Okay.
I think it could be doable. I haven't, but it seems possible. Or emojis. It could be.
Didn't you prove that emojis could be barcodes too, Andrew?
Yes, if you wanted to use emojis for barcodes, it can be done. It doesn't make any sense, but it's doable. All right, I've got a few things here, a couple things that are really I can't demonstrate, but I'm going to tell you about. First off is the system preference for track last patron activity. This is a thing you can turn on that records for each patron when was the last time they logged into the OPAC and when was the last time their account was authenticated by a third-party SIP login, which means basically the last time they used Overdrive or used Cloud Library, something that, you know, one of your databases that they had to log into. Previously, we had been warning people off of turning this on because it ate a lot of system resources. It's been, yeah, or libkey, you know, so like computer logins. Previously, we've been suggesting people not use this because it was really resource intensive. It's been reworked so it uses fewer system resources, principally because it's only checking once a day. Or rather, it's only recording the first interaction a patron has every day. Basically, the short version of this is a lot more usable. If this is a thing you want to use, we have no hesitation about turning it on now, so you can more easily know whether or not a patron has been logging into the OPAC using third-party stuff. This is your tool to use if you have ever deleted an expired patron and then found out that they weren't really supposed to be expired because they were still actively using your ebooks, which I know is a thing I've talked to libraries about. And then next up, we have a bug fix. 1805 had an issue with patron import, batch patron import, where it got really mad and did not successfully match patrons if you were giving both a card number and a username, and that has been fixed. So if you ran into problems with that with batch patron import, that's fixed in 1811. Another big conceptual one is that if you are using, you're welcome, Janelle. I'm going to take personal credit for it. It was all me. The next one, if you're using Talking Tech, you are now able, when you generate auto calls for Talking Tech. Oh, Ron, that was track last patron activity. If you're using Talking Tech to generate phone notices, you can now configure that to automatically skip that phone notice for any patron who has an email address in their account. That was actually sponsored by the Bedford Public Library. So if there's anybody from Bedford on the call, thank you. You can take a bow. All right, and that brings us back into things that I'm actually going to show you on a screen. The first one is this. If I click my help button, the help button is now taking you directly into the full Koha manual. still for the thing you were looking at. So I was in inventory. It has taken me straight into tools, and inventory is on here. The tools page is long. So it used to give you that sort of, I've lost the word, intermediate window that was like a short version of help for whatever you were looking at, and then had a link to the manual. Now it goes straight to the manual. Heather likes it. I kind of liked the intermediate thing that gave you some information, because sometimes that was enough. You didn't need to dive into the whole thing. But I think this change is worth it, if only for the fact that now we're at the manual in the regular browser window instead of in that sort of weird little window. And then I've got two things about reports. And if you've talked to me at all, you know that I get excited about reports changes. So the first one, again, I'm going to pull over a specific example. This is just a report we have on here for circulation from a previous calendar year. We don't circ much in our pretend library. And we have a new button, Create Chart. So how about, let's take our circulation for the year, and I'm going to make a bar chart. And let's just do issues and total transactions and draw that chart. Ta-da! So we've got some quick, easy data visualization built right into reports to generate a chart right here. I can go back to create chart and change. If I want those columns back that way, I need to do it. Yeah, it's cool. Leslie says, thank you, it's amazing. And yeah, it's real shiny. This chart is not the easiest thing in the world to like copy and paste into another document. And obviously, the chart I make here is not as fancy as the fanciest chart I can make in Excel. So like if you're a hardcore chart lover, you're gonna wanna still do this in Excel. But for some quick just visualization on the fly, this is a great tool. Ron, it is savable. It's a weird file format. It's a vector graphic. So depending on what software you have there to take a vector graphic and do stuff with it. I think like you could feed it into Photoshop, but like Publisher or Paint might not be quite up for it. Yeah, and as Heather says, like there are times when you need a chart, not a perfect chart. Not the most highly polished, give to your board, but just like, let's send this to somebody. Almi asked, what does the download of this look like? I shouldn't have said it's downloadable. It's like copyable.
It downloads to an SVG file, not one that's easily.
Yeah, there we go. Download chart SVG. I don't think I probably have something that will even quite know how to open this.
But as Janelle said, a snipping tool works too.
Yeah, snipping tool. Ron says use Inkscape, open source SVG editor. See, I don't do enough graphic stuff to know that. That's a good note. Let me write that down. All right, for my next reports thing, let me click edit on this report. And we've had a change to this interface down here in the box where we're entering the report. We've got changes here to give us line numbers and also do some color coding in our report to help make this a little bit more readable. This is also a very nicely formatted report. Someone has gone through the trouble of putting in line breaks and indentations to make this super readable. But all the color coding and stuff, that's just built in now. It's using Code Mirror as the SQL editor, which, yeah, just kind of makes it a little shinier, a little easier to read. And probably more important, a little easier to troubleshoot. If something is wrong in here and it gives you that yellow error box, that little error box will say there was an error on line 7. And then you know where to come in and say, okay, line 7 here, that's where it's broken. All right, coming into the home stretch, I'm going to go back to administration, to circ and fine rules, to our great big circ and fine rule matrix that we all know and love that has a new column. And I know we weren't all hoping for more columns in this table, but this is a good column. Note, we now have the ability to add a note to any of these rules to explain what the rule is for. So I've got one here, adult audio. If I mouse over that, it says, this is the circ rule note where you can add info. Okay, I forgot what the note was until I started to read it. The description of what you want this to be. So this one is a note that says 30 days, written by Kelly M. Every time I look at this, I get confused and think it's 30 days per kilometer. But yeah, any of these notes we can edit, type our note in, a note. And there's our note. And if we want to make that go away again, it's just gonna, I almost deleted the whole rule. Edit, delete. Yeah, particularly on a rather large and complicated thing, some notes never go awry. And the other change we have on this page is, what's the max size on the notes? Ask George. Probably pretty big. Oh, it doesn't want to let me just hold the button down. Not obviously hitting a limit. I could look at the database and tell you for sure, but it appears to be large. Oh, I hit a limit. That much. That many. So I'm going to put that at a couple of sentences, not like a whole paragraph. I'm sorry, that was the clumsiest way to answer that question, but it amused me in the moment. All right, next change we have on here is in this box, default checkout hold and return. No, I'm sorry, I'm reading the long one. This box, default checkout hold policy by patron category. Okay, 1805 and earlier, we have a system preference called max reserves that says how many holds total a patron can have. And that was a global system preference that applied to all patrons. All patrons can have up to 50 holds at a time, or whatever you had it set to. We now have the ability to vary that based on patron category. To say, sure, a regular adult patron, well, this is really strict, can only have 3 holds at a time, but library staff needs more holds sometimes. They can have unlimited holds. This gets defined per patron category and also per branch. So these are all libraries patron category limits. If I go into a specific branch, it also gets defined here. So we can also say adult patrons specifically at the main branch get a total of 50 holds, because adult patrons at the main branch are more responsible than adult patrons at other branches. I don't know. So more customization there. And really the example I've run into most often of what people want this for is to let library staff place a lot of holds but have patrons a little more limited. And speaking of library staff, my very last thing to show you today is over in Patrons, Permissions. So the ever-evolving patron permission table. That's not the word I want. And pardon me while I go briefly cross-eyed trying to find what I want. Here we go. Previously, for Koha admin settings, there were only a couple in here. It was really, really broad. It was basically you can change whatever you want or you cannot change anything in admin. This has gotten super granular. So if you've got an acquisitions person that you want to be able to come in and play with budgets and funds, you can give them just access to budgets and funds, not access to all of your system preferences. Or, you know, like I could definitely see you've got a circ person who gets to come in here and fiddle with cities and towns and patron categories, but maybe they don't get to fiddle with anything that has anything to do with cataloging. So this is absolutely an area where some granular permissions are super welcome. And I know we all are okay with giving our staff permission to more things than we want them to use and telling them to be responsible. But I also know that all of the system admins among us will say, don't do that. Only give people exactly as much permission as they need. And that is the end of my webinar. Thank you all for coming. Do you have any questions for me? I almost said I don't hear anybody, but I suppose I would wait for people to type.
Yeah, again, we will upload this video and post it on our website and get to those questions that we were unable to answer and also questions that we did answer on the website as well. Reposting those links we posted in chat if you didn't grab them.
Yep. All right, so we hope to see you in the next couple of weeks at all of our future webinars as we dive into more specifics about different modules. If you can't make those, please do have a look at the blog and the recordings, and hope you all have a fantastic upgrade. And I should say, since I see some of you among us, thank you again to all of our, I've lost the word, oh no, it's the end of the webinar, our early adopters who volunteered to get on 1811 early and help us find some of the issues. Hi, Almi. Yeah, I think this release was weighted a little more heavily toward tech services stuff. And so there ended up being more time given to that in this overview. Okay, well, you all have a good day. Keep dry. I think it's raining just about everywhere.
Oh, because tech services is awesome.
Well, I don't know, Heather.
Or the most outspoken, maybe. So that's where things get done. Put what you want. That's what I like to see.
I'm not saying tech services isn't awesome, but public services is pretty cool too.
Or the media. Just submit the bugs. That's all you got to do.